Lina's hands trembled as she examined the Byzantine reliquary under the museum's bright lights. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The patina was wrong, microscopically wrong. This wasn't the 6th century artifact the Musée Rodin had purchased for 2 million euros. This was a forgery. A perfect, flawless forgery that only one person in the entire world could have created. Nikos Stavros, her ex-fiancé. The man who had vanished without explanation 5 years ago, the night before their engagement party. Within 3 hours, French police detective Rousseau sat across from her in a cold interrogation room, his eyes hard and suspicious. "Your fingerprints are all over the case, Mademoiselle Belkacem. Your access codes were used to bypass security. You're either incredibly unlucky, or you helped your former lover commit the perfect crime." House arrest, electronic monitoring, her career hanging by a thread. That night, Nikos dropped through her apartment skylight like a phantom, landing softly in her living room. He wore all black, moved with the grace of a panther, and had that same infuriating half-smile that had once made her knees weak. "Hello, mon cœur," he said, his Greek accent curling around the French endearment. "We need to talk." Before she could scream, before she could call the police, he showed her a photograph on his phone. Her father, Professor Yusef Belkacem, respected historian and her only living family, entering a warehouse at 2 a.m, carrying the stolen reliquary. "Your father hired me to steal that artifact," Nikos said, his dark eyes locked on hers. "Then he tried to have me killed. If I don't deliver it to his buyers by Friday, they'll come for you instead." He took a step closer. "So you're coming with me, because I'm the only person who can keep you alive long enough to figure out why your father wants us both dead." Lina stared at the photograph, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes could clearly see. Her father, the man who had raised her alone after her mother's death, who had taught her to love history and art, who called her every Sunday without fail, was at the center of whatever criminal operation had just destroyed her life. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "I wish I was." Nikos moved toward her, and she backed away instinctively. He stopped, raising his hands. "Lina, listen to me. 3 days ago, your father contacted me through an intermediary. He offered me €500,000 to steal the reliquary and replace it with a forgery. I thought it was a simple job. Steal from a museum. No one gets hurt, everyone gets paid. But the moment I delivered it, his men tried to kill me. Why would he do that? Because I'm a loose end, and so are you." He glanced at his watch. "We have maybe 10 minutes before Detective Rousseau's surveillance team realizes I'm here. You can either come with me willingly, or I'll carry you out. Your choice." "That's not a choice. It's the only one you've got." Lina's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to call the police, to trust the system, to believe that her father had a reasonable explanation. But Nikos had risked everything to warn her. If he wanted to frame her, he could have simply disappeared. Instead, he was here, offering her a lifeline. "If you're lying to me," she began, "then you can kill me yourself." He pulled out zip ties. "I'm sorry about this, but we need to move fast and I can't risk you changing your mind halfway down the stairs." "You're going to tie me up?" "Gently," he promised, and there was something in his voice, regret, sadness, old affection, that made her hold out her wrists. He secured them carefully, checking twice to make sure the plastic wasn't too tight. His fingers were warm against her skin, and for a moment, she was transported back 5 years to when those same hands had held her like she was precious, like she was everything. Then, he lifted her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, and she hissed curses at him in French and Arabic while he made his way down the service stairs of her Moraes apartment building. Through the stairwell window, she caught a glimpse of Detective Rousseau's car pulling up to the front entrance. They were out of time. Nikos took her to a safe house in Belleville, a converted artist's studio with exposed brick walls, industrial windows, and what looked like millions of euros worth of stolen art casually displayed like someone's personal collection. "You kept all of it?" Lina asked as he cut her zip ties. She rubbed her wrists, looking around at paintings she recognized from Interpol's most wanted list. "I kept the pieces that no one was looking for anymore." He moved to a kitchenette and started making coffee. The statute of limitations ran out, or the insurance company settled, or the original owners died. "I'm a thief, Lina, not a monster." I don't keep things that people are still mourning. She wanted to argue, to tell him that stealing was stealing regardless of time limits. But she was exhausted. The adrenaline from the past 12 hours was wearing off, leaving her hollowed out and shaking. Nikos handed her a cup of coffee, 3 sugars, no cream, exactly how she'd always taken it, and she hated that he remembered. "Talk," she demanded. "Tell me everything." He spread files across a zinc table, shipping manifests, coded emails, photographs of her father with men in expensive suits. "For the past 3 years, your father has been running a smuggling operation. He uses Byzantine artifacts, reliquaries specifically, to transport something valuable. I thought it was drugs or diamonds at first, but it's worse than that." "How much worse?" "Biological weapons worse. Someone is using these ancient containers to move a weaponized neurotoxin disguised as sacred oil or ancient ink. The artifacts get sold to private collectors through legitimate museum channels, which means no customs inspection, no scrutiny. The buyers extract the toxin, and then your father reports the artifacts as forgeries. Insurance pays out, everyone profits, and people die." Lina's coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor. "No, my father would never. I have bank records showing deposits of over 10 million euros to his accounts in the past 2 years. I have shipping manifests with his signature. I have photographs of him meeting with known arms dealers." Nikos's voice was gentle but relentless. "Your father isn't being coerced, Lina. He's the architect." She wanted to scream, to cry, to wake up from this nightmare. Instead, she asked, "Why did you take the job if you knew what he was doing?" "I didn't know. Not until I made the delivery and his men started shooting." He touched his side, and she saw him wince. When he lifted his shirt, there was a fresh bandage covering what looked like a bullet graze. "I barely made it out. I've been hiding for 3 days, trying to figure out what's happening and how to stop it." "Why not just go to the police?" "Because your father has connections to half the government officials in France. The police might be compromised. Interpol might be compromised. The only person I trust right now is you. You barely know me anymore. It's been 5 years. I know you enough." His dark eyes held hers. "I know you're brilliant and stubborn, and you'd rather die than let innocent people get hurt. I know you're the only person who can help me authenticate the real reliquary and figure out where your father is hiding it. And I know that despite everything I did to you, despite every reason you have to hate me, you're still the only person I trust with my life." The words hung between them, heavy with history and unspoken pain. "Why did you leave?" The question escaped before she could stop it. 5 years ago, why did you disappear?" Nikos looked away. "That's a conversation for later. Right now, we need to focus on staying alive." "No," Lina stood, suddenly furious. "You don't get to drag me into your criminal underworld, tell me my father is a mass murderer, and then refuse to explain why you destroyed me 5 years ago. If we're going to work together, I need the truth, all of it." He was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Your father paid me 2 million euros to disappear from your life." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "What?" "He came to me 6 months before our engagement party. He said I was dragging you into a criminal world, that you'd never be safe with me, that I was selfish for wanting to keep you. He offered me money to vanish, to make it look like I'd chosen my work over you." Nikos's hands clenched into fists. "And I was so convinced I wasn't good enough for you, so certain that you deserved better than a thief with a dozen international warrants, that I took the money. I thought I was setting you free." "You thought?" Lina couldn't breathe. "You made that decision for me, without asking what I wanted?" "I know, I'm sorry. I've been sorry every day for 5 years." "Sorry doesn't fix anything," she was shouting now, years of buried pain erupting. "You left me standing in that restaurant wearing my engagement dress, surrounded by our friends, waiting for a man who never showed up. Do you have any idea what that did to me? What I thought about myself? I blame myself for not being enough, for not seeing that you didn't really love me." "I did love you," Nikos interrupted, his voice breaking. "I loved you so much it terrified me. That's why I left. I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" "From myself. From my past. From the life I lead." He stepped closer, and this time she didn't back away. "I spent 5 years trying to forget you, Lina. I took jobs in Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Cairo, anywhere that didn't remind me of Paris. But then your father tried to kill me, and I realized something. He didn't want to protect you 5 years ago. He wanted to isolate you, to make sure you'd never question his work, never dig too deep into his life. And I helped him do it. Lina felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. We can't change the past. No, but we can stop him from destroying your future. Nikos pulled out a map of Paris marked with red circles. Your father is hosting a private showing at the Musée d'Orsay in 2 days. He's bringing the buyers, the people who were purchasing the toxin. If we can get evidence of the transaction, record him confessing, we can hand everything to Interpol and clear both our names. How? You wear a wire, walk in as his daughter, the devoted curator. I pose as a Russian collector. We get close enough to record his confession, and we get out before his security realizes what we've done. It was insane, dangerous. It would probably get them both killed, but it was also the only plan they had. Okay, Lina said quietly. I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. When this is over, you're going to tell me everything. Every lie, every secret, every moment you chose to protect me instead of trusting me. No more decisions made for me. No more treating me like I'm fragile. Nikos nodded slowly. Deal. They shook hands like business partners, but when his fingers wrapped around hers, Lina felt the familiar spark, the connection that 5 years and countless betrayals hadn't managed to destroy. She pulled her hand away quickly, ignoring the flash of hurt in his eyes. Some things, she reminded herself, couldn't be fixed with a handshake and a promise. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Nikos taught Lina how to wear the wire, a nearly invisible device taped between her shoulder blades. He showed her how to position herself to get the best audio, how to keep her body language casual so no one would suspect she was recording. They worked side by side in the safe house, falling into an old rhythm that felt both comfortable and painful. He still made terrible jokes while examining artifacts. She still hummed while she worked, usually old French songs her mother had taught her. They didn't talk about the past or the future, focusing entirely on the immediate problem, her father and his deadly empire. But in the quiet moments, when Nikos brought her coffee at 3 a.m, and she caught him watching her with an expression that looked like longing, Lina felt the old pull. The attraction that had never quite died, despite everything. She hated herself for it. On the second night, they staked out the warehouse where her father had been photographed. They lay side by side on a rooftop across the street, using thermal imaging equipment to track movement inside the building. How many guards? Lina whispered. 6 that I can see, probably more inside. Nikos adjusted the equipment, his shoulder pressed against hers in the confined space. We're not going to be able to break in. Too much security. Then we stick with the original plan, the gala. The gala is dangerous too. If your father suspects anything, he won't. Lina kept her eyes on the warehouse, refusing to look at Nikos even though she could feel his warmth, smell the familiar scent of his cologne. He thinks I'm weak, naive. He spent my entire life convincing me that he's the hero and everyone else is the villain. He won't expect me to question him. You're not weak, Nikos said quietly. You never have been. Tell that to the woman who waited 2 hours for a fiancé who never showed up. The words were meant to hurt, and from the way Nikos flinched, she succeeded. I deserved that, he said. Yeah, you did. They lapsed into silence, watching the warehouse. At midnight, a car pulled up, a sleek black Mercedes with diplomatic plates. Lina's father emerged from the back seat laughing with 2 men she didn't recognize. One was Dr. Christos Pavlou, a Greek archaeologist she'd met at conferences. The other was unknown, but his posture screamed military training. Her father looked relaxed, happy, like a man enjoying a successful business venture, not someone trafficking poison that could kill thousands. Lina's stomach turned. Are you going to be okay? Nikos asked, his voice gentle. Seeing him? Confronting him? I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Lina. If this is too much, it's not. But her voice shook, betraying her. Nikos reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His fingers were warm and steady, and for a moment, Lina let herself draw strength from him. Then she remembered all the times he'd made decisions for her, all the ways he'd treated her like something fragile that needed protecting, and she pulled her hand back. "We should get back to the safe house," she said. "We have a lot of work to do before the gala." The Musée d'Orsay glittered like a jewel box on the night of the event. Paris's elite mingled beneath the vaulted ceilings, admiring the impressionist masterpieces, while waiters circulated with champagne and tiny artistic hors d'oeuvres. Lina arrived in an emerald silk gown that hugged her curves and featured a daringly low back, necessary to hide the wire. Nikos had taken her to a private fashion house where his contact had outfitted her like she was walking a red carpet. When she'd emerged from the dressing room, Nikos had gone very still. "You look like someone I used to know," he'd said quietly. "Someone I don't deserve to know again." Now, standing in the museum's grand hall, Lina felt like she was playing a role in a movie. She smiled at people she recognized from the art world, made small talk about recent acquisitions, and all the while, her heart hammered against her ribs. Across the room, Nikos moved through the crowd with casual elegance, playing the part of a Russian collector interested in Byzantine artifacts. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark hair slicked back, looking every inch the wealthy criminal he was pretending to be. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a nearly imperceptible nod. It was time. Lina found her father in the Byzantine gallery, surrounded by a group of well-dressed men and women who looked more like politicians than art lovers. He greeted her with a warm smile and a kiss on each cheek. "Ma fille," he beamed at the others. "Gentlemen, this is my daughter Lina. She's a curator at the Musée Rodin, brilliant mind just like her mother." The praise should have warmed her. Instead, it felt like poison. "Papa, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" She kept her voice light, casual. Of course." He excused himself from the group and led her to a quieter corner of the gallery, near a stunning Byzantine icon of the Virgin Mary. "What is it, Cherie? Is something wrong?" This was it, the moment where she could either pretend everything was fine or burn her entire world down. Lina took a breath and jumped. "Papa, I know about the reliquaries. I know what you're transporting." Her father's expression didn't change, not immediately, but something shifted behind his eyes, a calculation happening at lightning speed. When he finally spoke, his voice was mild. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't." The word came out harder than she intended. "Don't lie to me. I've seen the evidence, the shipping manifests, the bank accounts, the meetings with arms dealers. I know everything." Professor Belkacem glanced around the gallery, ensuring they were still alone. When he looked back at Lina, the warmth had drained from his face, leaving something cold and reptilian. "And what will you do about it?" he asked softly. "Destroy your family's legacy? Your mother died in poverty while I scraped together a pittance teaching at universities. This work," he gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings, "it gives you the life you have, your position at the museum, your apartment, your reputation. You benefit from what I've built, Lina. Don't pretend your hands are clean. People die from what you're selling." "People die every day," he said dismissively. "From disease, from poverty, from the cruelty of the world. I didn't create that cruelty. I simply learned to profit from it. Now," his voice hardened, "where is Nikos Stavros? He has something that belongs to me." Lina felt her blood run cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence." Her father took a step closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. "I know he contacted you. I know you've been hiding him. Tell me where he is, and we can forget this conversation ever happened. You'll go back to your life, and I'll handle the Greek." "Handle him? You mean kill him?" "I mean, resolve the problem." Her father's eyes were flat, emotionless. "He's a criminal, Lina. A thief who would have dragged you into darkness if I hadn't intervened 5 years ago. I did you a favor." The confession hit her like a physical blow. "You paid him to leave. I protected you. There's a difference." Before Lina could respond, Dr. Pavlou appeared with 2 security guards. "Youssef, we have a problem. There's a man matching Stavros's description near the Rodin exhibit. Our people are moving to intercept." Everything happened too fast. Alarms blared. Gunshots, silenced but unmistakable, echoed through the galleries. Civilians screamed and ran for the exits. Lina's father grabbed her arm with bruising force. "You betrayed me," he hissed. "You betrayed yourself." She wrenched free and ran, her heels clattering on the marble floors, her elegant gown tearing as she sprinted through the museum. She had to find Nikos. She had to warn him. Behind her, she heard her father shouting orders into a radio. "Bring me my daughter! Kill the Greek!" Lina found Nikos on the museum's rooftop terrace overlooking the Seine. He was bleeding from a wound on his shoulder, his tuxedo jacket abandoned, the reliquary case clutched in one hand. "We need to go," she gasped. "Now." He turned and his face flooded with relief. "Thank God, I thought—" He saw her torn dress, her terrified expression. "What happened?" "He knows. My father knows everything. He has people coming." Armed men burst through the rooftop access door, cutting off her words. Nikos grabbed her hand and ran toward the edge of the terrace. Ahead of them, a 10-foot gap to the next building's rooftop. Behind them, men with guns. "Do you trust me?" Nikos asked. "Absolutely not," Lina replied. "Good. That means you're thinking clearly." He tightened his grip on her hand. "On 3. 1. Wait, I can't jump that far in heels. 2. Nikos! 3. They jumped. For one terrifying moment, Lina was airborne, the Seine glittering far below, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white. Then, they were crashing onto the opposite rooftop, Nikos pulling her down and rolling to absorb the impact. Pain exploded through her shoulder, but they were alive. Gunfire stitched across the rooftop where they had just been standing. "Move!" Nikos hauled her to her feet, and they ran across Paris rooftops like something out of a heist movie, jumping gaps and dodging bullets while sirens wailed in the distance. They finally stopped in a narrow service alley in the 6th arrondissement, both of them gasping for breath. Rain had started to fall, cold and cleansing, washing away the blood and sweat and fear. Nikos checked her injuries with careful hands, his face stricken with guilt. "Your shoulder. It's fine." It wasn't fine, it hurt like hell, but compared to everything else, physical pain seemed minor. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "God, Lina, I'm so sorry. I dragged you into this nightmare. You didn't drag me anywhere." She was crying now, the adrenaline crash brutal and complete. "My father did this. My own father tried to have me killed." The truth of it finally hit her, and she collapsed against the alley wall, sobbing. Everything she'd believed about her life, about her family, about who she was, all of it was built on lies. Nikos pulled her into his arms, and she didn't have the strength to push him away. He held her while she broke, his hand cradling the back of her head, his voice murmuring comfort in Greek and French. "You're not responsible for his choices," he whispered. "You're the best thing he ever had in his life, and he weaponized it. That's on him, not you." When she finally pulled back, their faces were inches apart. Rain had plastered his dark hair to his forehead. She could see every scar, every line of exhaustion, every year of loneliness etched into his features. "If we survive this," she began. He kissed her. It was desperate and inevitable, 5 years of longing compressed into a single moment. She kissed him back like she was reclaiming something that had been stolen, her hands fisting in his wet shirt, and for 30 seconds, the world narrowed to just his mouth, his warmth, the way he whispered her name like a prayer. Then, sirens cut through the rain, and reality came crashing back. Nikos pulled away, breathing hard. "There's a safe house in Athens. My contact can analyze the toxin, testify to Interpol. We get on a train tonight, we disappear, and we figure out how to stop your father from a safe distance." "Run away?" Lina stared at him. "That's your solution?" "It's called survival. It's called cowardice." She pushed away from him, suddenly furious. "I have a life here, Nikos. A career, colleagues, students who depend on me. You're asking me to throw it all away. For what? For us? There is no us. There's just this nightmare we're trapped in." "There could be an us," he said, and the raw vulnerability in his voice nearly broke her. "If you'd let there be." "I can't run. I won't." Lina straightened her spine, tried to find some dignity despite her torn dress and ruined makeup. "We stay, we fight, we clear our names the right way." "The right way gets you killed," Nikos said flatly. "Your father has connections to governments, Lina. The police might be compromised. The system you want to trust could be bought and paid for. So we just give up? We let him win? We live to fight another day." They stood in the rain, at an impasse, while the sounds of pursuit grew closer. Lina's phone buzzed, a text from her father. "Come home. We'll forget this happened. I can protect you, but only if you abandon the thief. Choose your family, Lina. Choose wisely. She looked at Nikos, at the man who had lied to her, betrayed her, and was now offering her a future built on running and hiding. Then she looked at her phone, at her father's message, offering protection in exchange for betrayal. Both men wanted her to choose them. Neither was asking what she wanted. I need time to think, she said. We don't have time. Then I guess we're both out of luck. She started walking toward the mouth of the alley, toward the sirens and the chaos and the mess of her destroyed life. Lina, wait. No. She didn't turn around. I'm done with men making decisions for me. Done with being protected and managed and controlled. I'll figure this out on my own. She walked away into the rain, leaving Nikos standing alone in the alley. And this time, he didn't follow. Lina spent the night in a cheap hotel near Gare du Nord, paying cash and using a fake name. She couldn't go home. Her apartment was under surveillance. She couldn't go to friends. It would put them in danger. She couldn't go to the police, not until she understood who she could trust. So she sat on a lumpy mattress in a room that smelled like cigarettes and bleach, and she tried to make sense of her shattered world. Her father was a criminal. Nikos had lied to her, twice. The police thought she was guilty. The system she'd devoted her career to was compromised, and somewhere in Paris, a weaponized toxin was being prepared for sale to the highest bidder. At dawn, her phone rang. Detective Rousseau. Mademoiselle Belkacem, I know you're not at your apartment. I know you fled the museum during the incident. If you don't turn yourself in within 24 hours, I will have no choice but to issue a fugitive warrant. I'm trying to help, Lina said. There's a smuggling operation involving your father and your ex-lover. Yes, I'm aware. Rousseau's voice was weary. But from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're part of it. If you're innocent, prove it. Come in, make a statement. And if the police are compromised, then you're right to run, but you'll be running for the rest of your life. He paused. 24 hours, mademoiselle. Choose wisely. The line went dead. Lina stared at her phone, feeling the walls closing in. She had 24 hours to clear her name, stop her father, and somehow survive this nightmare with her life and career intact. No pressure. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Lina decided to do the one thing that terrified her most, confront her father directly. She called him from a burner phone she'd bought at a corner store. Papa, I need to see you, alone. Ma fila. His voice was warm again, the cold reptilian edge from the museum completely gone. I'm so glad you called. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Come to the house. We'll have tea and sort this out. Just the two of us. The house. Their family home in the 16th arrondissement, where she'd grown up, where her mother had died, where Lina had learned to love history and art from a man she thought was a hero. It felt like walking into a trap, but it was the only way forward. She took a taxi across the city, watching Paris slide past the windows. The city she loved, now feeling hostile and strange. When she arrived at the elegant Haussmann building, the doorman greeted her like always. No idea that the professor's daughter was now a fugitive. Her father answered the door personally, pulling her into a hug that felt like mockery. Come in, you must be exhausted. The apartment looked exactly as she remembered, packed floor to ceiling with books and artifacts, the walls covered in framed photographs and scholarly awards. Her mother smiled from a dozen frames, frozen in time, forever young and healthy. Professor Belkacem made mint tea in the kitchen, the familiar ritual achingly normal. When he handed her a delicate glass cup, Lina had to fight the urge to throw it in his face. I know you're upset, he said, settling into his worn leather armchair. But you must understand, everything I've done has been for our family, for you. Don't, Lina set her tea down untouched. Don't pretend this is about me. But it is. He leaned forward, earnest and passionate, the professor delivering a lecture. Your mother died in a public hospital, Lina, surrounded by strangers, because we couldn't afford private care. I was teaching at 3 universities, writing papers that no one read, barely making enough to keep us fed. Do you know what that does to a man? Watching the woman he loves suffer because he can't provide? So you became a criminal. I became practical. He stood, pacing the familiar room. The art world is full of wealthy people who pay millions for objects they don't need while children starve in the streets. I simply found a way to redistribute that wealth. And yes, I transport other items for certain clients, but those clients exist whether I help them or not. At least this way, our family benefits. People die from what you're selling, Lina said, her voice shaking. The toxin in those reliquaries, it's a weapon. It's a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or ill. That's not my responsibility. He returned to his chair, studying her with clinical detachment. You're thinking like your mother now, too idealistic, too soft. Mom was soft? She died of cancer while working 2 jobs to support your academic career. And I made sure you would never suffer the same fate. He pulled a document from his desk drawer and slid it across the coffee table. Sign this. It states that Nikos Stavros coerced you, manipulated you, stole your access codes. The police will arrest him, the buyers will get their shipment, and you'll be cleared. Your life returns to normal. Lina picked up the document with trembling hands. It was all there, a complete fabrication that would destroy Nikos and absolve her. She could go back to her apartment, her job, her carefully curated life. All she had to do was sacrifice the one person who had tried to save her. And if I don't sign? Her father's face hardened. Then you're complicit. I have evidence that will paint you as my partner. Your signatures on shipping manifests, your access codes, your expertise in authentication. You'll spend 20 years in prison, Lina, and Nikos, he'll be dead before sunset. The threat hung in the air, crystal clear. Why? Lina whispered. Why would you do this to your own daughter? Because I love you enough to make the hard choices. He stood, moving toward her. You're emotional right now, confused. You'll see. In a few years, when you're established in your career, when you have everything you ever wanted, you'll understand that I did this for you. The apartment door crashed open. Nikos stormed in with 2 Interpol agents, Detective Rousseau and a woman Lina didn't recognize. Get away from her, Nikos commanded, his voice cold and deadly. Lina's father stepped back, surprisingly calm. Ah, the cavalry arrives. We've been recording everything, Rousseau said, holding up his phone. Your confession, your threats, all of it. Professor Yusef Belkacem, you're under arrest for international arms trafficking, smuggling, conspiracy to commit murder. You can't prove any of that, her father interrupted smoothly. I was speaking hypothetically, testing my daughter's loyalty. Any competent lawyer will have this thrown out in hours. Maybe, the female agent said. She was tall, severe, with iron gray hair and eyes like steel. But we also have the testimony of Dr. Christos Pavlou, who turned state's evidence 2 hours ago. We have your bank records, your shipping manifests, and security footage of you personally handling the reliquaries. You're done, Professor. For the first time, Professor Belkacem's composure cracked. He looked at Lina, and there was something almost like sadness in his eyes. I gave you everything. You gave me lies, Lina replied, her voice steady now. And I'm done accepting them. As Rousseau led her father away in handcuffs, Lina sat frozen on the couch, staring at the apartment full of artifacts and memories. Everything she'd believed about her life had been a carefully constructed fiction. The female agent approached, extending her hand. Agent Sophia Marchand, Interpol. Are you all right, mademoiselle? No, Lina said honestly. I'm really not. Understandable. Marchand's expression softened slightly. You'll need to come to headquarters and make a formal statement. But for what it's worth, you did the right thing. Lina looked past Marchand to where Nikos stood in the doorway, watching her with an unreadable expression. Did I? Or did I just let someone else make my decisions again? She stood and walked toward Nikos, stopping a few feet away. You wired him. You knew I was coming here, and you wired my father. Yes. You used me as bait. Again. Yes. No apology, no justification. Just brutal honesty. You didn't trust me to handle this on my own. You're right. I didn't. Nikos met her eyes, his jaw tight. I trusted you to be exactly who you are. Someone who would try to see the best in her father, who would want to believe he could be reasoned with. I knew he'd threaten you, and I knew you wouldn't protect yourself. So I protected you. By making choices for me. Again. By keeping you alive. They stood in the wreckage of her childhood home, 2 people who'd saved each other and betrayed each other in equal measure, and Lina felt something inside her break. I can't do this. she said quietly. I can't be with someone who thinks protecting me means controlling me. I can't live in a world where everyone makes decisions for me because they think they know better. Lina, my father used love as an excuse to manipulate me. You're using love as an excuse to manage me. Can't you see? It's the same thing. The words hit him like a physical blow. It's not the same. Your father is a sociopath. I'm trying to what? Save me? I don't need saving, Nikos. I need a partner. Someone who trusts me to make my own choices, even when those choices are dangerous. She felt tears burning, but refused to let them fall. You never asked what I wanted. You decided, you planned, and you expected me to fall in line, just like my father. That's not fair. Neither is any of this. Lina turned to Agent Marchand. I'm ready to make my statement. As she walked out of the apartment, Nikos called after her. Lina, please don't do this. She paused in the doorway, but didn't turn around. Goodbye, Nikos. This time, the goodbye felt permanent. The next 3 weeks were a blur of interrogations, testimony, and media scrutiny. Professor Yusef Belkacem's arrest made international headlines. Celebrated historian revealed to be the architect of a sophisticated smuggling network. Lina's name was mentioned in every article. Her photograph splashed across newspapers and websites. She lost her job at the Musée Rodin. Not officially. They called it indefinite administrative leave. But everyone knew the truth. She was too controversial, too connected to the scandal. The board wanted her gone. Her colleagues stopped calling. Her friends offered sympathy that felt more like pity. She spent her days in her apartment, preparing for the trial, trying to make sense of who she was without her career, her father, or her illusions. Nikos had disappeared. Interpol released him after 48 hours. Insufficient evidence to hold him, diplomatic complications, the usual bureaucratic tangles that let wealthy criminals slip through the system. Agent Marchand told Lina he'd left France, gone back to Athens. She told herself she didn't care. She was lying. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courtroom was packed with journalists, government officials, and curious spectators. Lina sat in the witness box, her hands folded calmly in her lap, while her father's defense attorney tried to paint her as a collaborator. Isn't it true, Mademoiselle Belkacem, that you used your position at the museum to facilitate your father's operation? No. Isn't it true that you were romantically involved with Nikos Stavros, a known international thief? 5 years ago, yes? And isn't it convenient that he reappeared just as this alleged smuggling operation was exposed? There's nothing convenient about any of this, Lina replied, her voice steady. My father built a criminal empire that resulted in deaths across multiple countries. I testified against him because it was the right thing to do. If you're suggesting I somehow benefited from exposing him, I'd like to point out that I've lost my career, my reputation, and my father. So no, counselor, there's nothing convenient about telling the truth. The lawyer shifted tactics, but Lina held firm. She'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with prosecutors to build an airtight case. She described every detail, the forgeries, the reliquaries, the toxin, the network of buyers. She was calm, professional, devastating. Her father watched her from the defendant's table with unreadable eyes. When it was his turn to speak, Professor Belkacem stood with the dignity of a scholar addressing a conference. I regret nothing, he said, except that I couldn't make my daughter understand. The world is not kind to idealists. You'll learn that, Lina, when you're older and wiser. I've already learned, Lina replied, shocking the courtroom by addressing him directly. I've learned that love without respect is control, that protection without consent is imprisonment. You taught me that, Papa, and I'm grateful because now I know what I won't accept from anyone. The judge sentenced him to 25 years. After the trial, Lina stood outside the Palais de Justice, watching rain pool in the cobblestones. The media had finally moved on to other scandals, other stories. She was alone again, which was both a relief and an ache. Detective Rousseau approached, holding an envelope. This came for you, from Greece. Lina's hands shook as she opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper, Nikos' handwriting in Greek and French. Lina, you were right. I orchestrated, controlled, decided all the things I hated your father for doing. I didn't trust you to be as strong as you are. That was my failure, not yours. The reliquary has been destroyed. The network is collapsing. Interpol has made 17 arrests across 9 countries. Your testimony made that possible. You saved millions of lives by being brave enough to face the truth, even when it destroyed you. I'm in Athens. There's a taverna in Plaka that serves the best moussaka in Greece. The owner asks about you. I told her about the museum curator who can authenticate a forgery by touch alone, who speaks 4 languages, who once broke into a chateau with me just to see if we could. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to have dinner. 1 meal. No schemes, no wires, no protection. Just 2 people who know each other's worst truths and are still foolish enough to hope. The choice is yours. It will always be yours. I'll be there every Friday at 8 p.m. for the next year. Show up when you're ready. Or don't. N. At the bottom, an address in Athens and a photograph. Nikos sitting alone at a table set for 2, looking at the empty chair across from him with an expression that looked like heartbreak. Lina stared at the photo for a long time, rain soaking through her coat, and tried to figure out what she wanted. Not what her father had wanted for her, not what Nikos thought she needed. What she wanted, independent of everyone else's expectations and manipulations. It took 6 months to find the answer. Athens in late spring was golden and warm, the Acropolis rising above the city like a crown. Lina stepped off the plane feeling lighter than she had in years. Not healed exactly, but healing. Learning to live with scars. The past 6 months had been transformative. The Musée Rodin had offered her the head curator position after a formal review cleared her of any wrongdoing. She'd accepted, then promptly taken a 3-month sabbatical to travel, to Algeria to visit her mother's family, to Rome to study Byzantine art, to herself to figure out who she was without her father's shadow. She'd started therapy, joined a support group for families of criminals, learned to recognize manipulation patterns before they consumed her. She'd also learned that she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, strong enough to testify against her father, strong enough to walk away from Nikos, strong enough to rebuild her life from rubble. Now she stood outside a small taverna in Plaka, watching through the window as Nikos sat alone at a table set for 2, reading a book in Greek. It was Friday, 8 p.m., exactly as he'd promised. Lina counted 6 other empty chairs around him, evidence of other Fridays, other meals eaten alone while he waited for someone who might never come. She pushed open the door. Nikos looked up, and his entire face transformed, shock, joy, disbelief, cycling through his expressions faster than she could catalog them. He stood slowly, like he was afraid sudden movement might make her disappear. "You came," he said. "I came." Lina slid into the chair across from him, setting down her bag. "Sorry I'm late. Got held up at the Acropolis. Tourist crowds. I've been waiting 6 months. I can forgive a few minutes." He looked different, thinner, tired, but also somehow more settled, like he'd been doing his own work on himself. The taverna owner, a robust woman with silver hair, appeared with wine and warm bread, greeting Lina like a long-lost friend even though they'd never met. "Finally, he's been so sad, every Friday alone." She swatted Nikos affectionately. "I told him, send another letter, but he says no, it must be her choice." When they were alone again, Lina broke the bread, a ritual of peace offering. "How have you been?" Honestly, Nikos poured wine for both of them. Terrible, lonely, productive, unfortunately. "I've been working with Interpol as a consultant, helping them recover stolen artifacts. Legitimate work, legal contracts, the whole thing. It turns out I'm quite good at finding stolen art when I'm not the one stealing it." "That's great. It's boring as hell." He smiled slightly. "But it's also good, right? I wake up without wondering if today's the day I get arrested. That's new." "I started therapy too," Lina offered, "twice a week. My therapist specializes in helping people recover from parental manipulation. She says I have complex trust issues and difficulty setting boundaries. Apparently, I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all?" They talked about safe things, her new position at the museum, his consulting work, books they'd read, places they'd traveled. The conversation flowed easily, old friends catching up, carefully avoiding the minefield of their shared past. Finally, as the candles burned low and the taverna emptied around them, Lina asked the question that had been burning in her chest all evening. Why did you keep coming here? Every Friday for 6 months? Nikos set down his wine glass, choosing his words carefully. Because I needed to prove something to myself, that I could wait without orchestrating, that I could respect your timeline without trying to control the outcome, that I could hold space for you without demanding you fill it. He met her eyes. My therapist says I use grand gestures to avoid actual intimacy. Apparently, it's easier for me to break into a museum than to have an honest conversation about my feelings. Despite everything, Lina laughed. That's terribly inconvenient for a professional thief. Former professional thief, he corrected. I'm reformed now, mostly. I still have the impulse to pick locks when I'm nervous, but I'm working on it. Are you nervous now? Terrified. The admission was raw, honest. You're sitting here, and I don't know if it's because you're willing to try again or because you wanted closure. Either way, I'm terrified I'll say the wrong thing, and you'll leave. And I'll spend another 6 months eating alone while Katerina, he gestured to the taverna owner, tells me I'm an idiot. You are an idiot, Lina said gently. But so am I. I walked away without giving you a chance to explain, without considering that maybe you were learning too. I expected you to be perfect immediately, and that wasn't fair. You had every right to walk away. I violated your trust. You did. And my father violated my entire life. Lina folded her hands on the table, trying to articulate what she'd spent 6 months figuring out. I've been thinking about trust, what it means, how it's built. My father taught me that trust equals control, that the people who love you should make your decisions, protect you from yourself, manage your life. But that's not trust. That's possession. No, Nikos agreed quietly. It's not. Real trust is messier. It's letting someone see you fail and not rescuing them. It's respecting someone enough to let them make their own mistakes. It's believing that the person you love is strong enough to survive without you managing every outcome. She looked at him directly. Can you do that? Can you love me without trying to protect me from the world? The question hung between them, honest and brutal. Nikos was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. I don't know. Not with complete certainty. My instinct is still to control outcomes, to orchestrate solutions, to make sure you're safe even if it means making decisions for you. He reached across the table, palm up, offering. But I'm learning. I have a therapist who calls me out when I'm being controlling. I have Interpol supervisors who force me to collaborate instead of dictate. And I have 6 months of sitting alone at this table, practicing the discipline of waiting without acting. Lina looked at his offered hand but didn't take it yet. I need more than practice, I need a promise. Name it. Promise me that if I tell you I can handle something, you believe me. Promise me that you'll talk to me about your fears instead of acting on them in secret. Promise me that you'll respect my choices even when they scare you. She took a breath. And promise me that if you can't do those things, you'll tell me honestly instead of pretending until you explode. I promise. Nikos's voice was fierce. I promise all of it, and when I fail, because I will fail, Lina, I'm human and broken and learning, I promise to acknowledge it, apologize, and try again. I won't hide behind grand gestures or manipulation. I'll just be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Then I promise the same things. Lina finally placed her hand in his. I promise to tell you when I'm struggling instead of pretending I'm fine. I promise to be direct about my needs instead of expecting you to read my mind. I promise to give you the benefit of the doubt when you make mistakes, as long as you're genuinely trying. She squeezed his fingers. And I promise to stay, even when things get hard, as long as we're both being honest. They sat like that, hands clasped across the table, while Katerina brought dessert, honey pastries that melted on the tongue. And more, wine, and the Athens night wrapped around them like a blessing. So what now? Nikos asked. What does this look like, practically? I don't know, Lina admitted. I live in Paris. You live in Athens. I have a demanding job. You have consulting contracts across Europe. We have a history full of betrayal and manipulation. This could be a disaster. Could be, he agreed. Probably will be, at least sometimes. But I'd like to try, slowly, with boundaries, with our eyes open. She smiled slightly. Maybe I visit Athens once a month. Maybe you come to Paris. Maybe we video chat and send ridiculous texts and learn to build something real instead of dramatic. I can work with that. Nikos raised his wine glass. To trying, to honesty, to relationships that are messy and human and real. To not running away when things get complicated, Lina added, clinking her glass against his. To not orchestrating outcomes. To trust. They drank, sealing the promise, and Lina felt something settle in her chest, not certainty, but hope. The kind of hope that wasn't naive or blind, but earned through pain and growth and brutal honesty. After dinner, they walked through Plaka's narrow streets, the Acropolis glowing above them like an ancient guardian. Lina's hand was tucked into Nikos's elbow, comfortable and natural. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "What if we try and it doesn't work? What if all this growth and therapy isn't enough?" "Then we'll have tried," Nikos said simply, "and we'll know we gave it everything we had. That's better than spending the rest of our lives wondering, what if?" "Is it?" "I think so, but I'm biased." He stopped walking, turning to face her in the glow of a street lamp. "I spent 5 years in hell because I walked away from you. I'm not doing that again. I'd rather try and fail than live with the regret of not trying at all." Lina reached up, cupping his face with both hands. He was warm and solid and real. Not a fantasy, not a villain, just a complicated person trying to be better. "I'm going back to Paris on Monday." "I know, but I'll come back next month and the month after that. As many times as it takes to figure out if this can work." "As many times as it takes," he repeated and kissed her forehead gently. "I'll be here every Friday, whether you come or not, because I'm learning that showing up consistently matters more than grand gestures." They continued walking, talking about logistics and boundaries, negotiating the terms of their fragile new beginning. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, no swelling music, no declarations of eternal love. But it was honest, which felt more valuable than romance. When Nikos walked her back to her hotel, he stopped at the entrance. "Do you want me to come up?" "No," Lina said, and saw the flash of hurt in his eyes. "Not because I don't want you, but because we're taking this slowly, remember? And because I need to be sure I'm making decisions for the right reasons, not just because I'm lonely or nostalgic." "That's fair." He stepped back, giving her space. "Can I call you tomorrow?" "I'd like that." "And next month, when you come back?" "I'll let you know my flight details. Maybe you can pick me up at the airport. We can get dinner, walk around the city, see how it feels." "I can do that." Nikos smiled, and it was real. Not the half smile of a thief planning a heist, but the genuine warmth of a man who'd been given an unexpected gift. "Thank you for showing up tonight, for giving me another chance." "Thank you for waiting," Lina replied, "for respecting my timeline even when it must have been excruciating." "It was." He laughed ruefully. "Katerina threatened to ban me from the taverna if I didn't stop looking so pathetic. But it was worth it. You're worth it." She kissed him then, soft and brief, a promise rather than a culmination. When she pulled back, both of them were smiling. "Good night, Nikos." "Good night, Lina." She went upstairs alone, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel lonely. She felt clear, grounded, like she'd finally found her footing after years of being pushed and pulled by other people's expectations. From her hotel window, she could see Nikos walking away through the Athens streets, his hands in his pockets, his stride lighter than when she'd arrived. She pulled out her phone and texted him, "Thank you for letting me choose." His response came immediately, "Thank you for choosing to try." 6 months later, Lina moved to Athens permanently. Not because Nikos asked her to, but because the National Archaeological Museum offered her a position she couldn't refuse. Head of Byzantine Studies, leading a team of international researchers with a salary that made her former museum position look like an internship. She and Nikos found an apartment in Kaukaki, near the Acropolis, with high ceilings and too much sunlight and a view of ancient ruins from their balcony. They split the rent equally. They took turns cooking. They went to therapy, individually and sometimes together. It wasn't perfect. They fought about boundaries and communication. Nikos still struggled with his controlling instincts. Lina still struggled with trusting that people wouldn't manipulate her. But they fought fair, and they apologized when they screwed up. And slowly, painfully, they built something real. On their first anniversary, measured from that Friday night at the taverna, they went back to Plaka. Katerina greeted them like family, seating them at their usual table. "So," Nikos said, pouring wine, "was it worth it? The 6 months of therapy, the long-distance flights, the constant negotiations?" Lina considered this seriously. "Ask me again in 10 years. That's not very romantic." "No," she agreed, "but it's honest. And I think honest is better than romantic." "Even for an expert romance writer?" He grinned, referencing the crime novels she'd started writing in her spare time, sprawling stories about art theft and moral complexity that were selling surprisingly well. "Especially for an expert romance writer, I've learned that real love is messier and harder and less dramatic than fiction. It's showing up when you're tired. It's having the same argument for the third time and still choosing to work through it. It's believing that someone can change without expecting them to be perfect." Nikos reached across the table, taking her hand. "I like our messy, hard, undramatic love." "Good." Lina squeezed his fingers. "Because you're stuck with it, with me, for as long as we both keep showing up and being honest." "Deal." They ate moussaka and drank too much wine and talked about everything and nothing. The small, ordinary intimacies of two people building a life together. Outside, Athens hummed with life and history, a city that had survived empires and wars and countless human dramas. And inside, a small taverna in Plaka, two people who'd been broken and betrayed were learning that love wasn't about perfect moments or grand gestures. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other, over and over again, one difficult day at a time. From the shadows across the street, if anyone had been watching, they would have seen Agent Sophia Marchand making a note in her file. Subjects appear stable, relationship functional, threat level minimal. Recommend closing active surveillance. But neither Lina nor Nikos looked back toward the shadows. They were too busy planning their future, a trip to Algeria to meet her mother's family, a consultation job in Rome they could work together, a life built on trust and honesty instead of manipulation and control. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected, but it was the one they'd earned. And sometimes, that was enough.